Uh, Good afternoon. Hope everybody has managed to submit the first assignment. And of course, there are a couple of people have got medical reasons and they will do that sooner or later. Now, I just thought I might give you a kind of a lecture itself on the second assessment, which is about the reflective writing that you are expected to do, and connect the theoretical orientations to a case study. The case study that you have is very, only a few aspects of the case study are revealed to you. But certainly, those of you who have had the opportunity of looking at the textbook itself, um, or got hold of chapter 2 will be able to read further from Hughes and his particular textbook. So basically, underneath the description of your assessment, we have identified that it identifies, we have given a case study there with 4 stages in the organization's development. Very, very important 4 stages. Look at them. Now you are in the seventh to eighth week of this unit. And I have given about 7. In fact, even the 8th lecture has also been put up on the system. So we are expecting that you should have a reasonable understanding of the theoretical orientations with which organizations need to be analyzed here, and also expect you to undertake an analysis based on human service organizational theory. We are not expecting you to do research into empowerment theory, strength-based practice theory, or anti-oppressive theory or systems theory. No, those are in the social work arena, certainly very, very helpful for you from the perspective of dealing with clients. This is about ourselves. This is about us, our resources, the organizations, the teams that we are involved in, the managerial decisions that come about, the bureaucracies which we serve, whether they are bureaucracies or not. And those are the kind of things that I expect you to certainly focus in this particular assignment. It's 1,500 words, not too big. And it's not a very labor intensive one, but it certainly wants you to reflect creatively. And there is no need for you to be very innovative in this particular assignment because the theoretical perspectives are already laid out. And they can be from the theoretical orientations that I've talked about before, or you could even read any of the orientations that you might find, certainly in the management literature, whether it is from the profit-centered sector or not to profit-centered sector. All you need to do is apply them to what you know about this particular organization, Avalon Care. So that's the first thing. So in this assessment, we are very clear. We are looking for organizational behavior theories, organizational change theories, and theories which serve human service organizations and management. It is not any of the other theories with which social work is taught. So we're not going to use those other theories. Now, let me, so what does the theoretical models expect us to do, and what we are going to do the review. So as students, you are asked to take up 2 key stages within the case study organization. For example, in this short report, I want you to think in terms of what are the aspects that you can see very clearly in terms of um, your reflection and in terms of your analysis. So I'm going to show you, I'm going to use the PowerPoint itself, which I made in this for this particular perspective. So I called it Tackling the Second Assignment, Some Approaches. Now, okay, so what does that mean, and what does the tackling mean? We understand that human service organizations in the last 15 to 20 years have transformed. They are, of course, still charitable. They have a purpose, they have a vision, but they do seem to be becoming a little more business oriented. They seem to be using marketing as part of their process. There are outcomes for the clients. There is a language which is moving on. We do talk about consumers and things like that. There is a focus on efficiency and there is a focus on effective service delivery. We also seem to be talking about professionals, the way they work. The focus is on the best for the client. And sometimes that does create a tension. We want the best for the client, but maybe the resources don't really allow us to do the best. Nevertheless, this assignment is about a couple of theories that you need to be looking at, and I'll try and see how we can work through this. So in the few lectures that you've had, in fact, the first and the second lectures perhaps, there is, I guess, uh, what definitions you would like to go with from previous lectures and readings. Should we take that organization is defined as a working machine that has complicated components and is built for efficiency and productivity? Would you like to go with that? Or would you like to go with organizations will and could dehumanize people and have potential to become a psychic jail? So what's the context in which you will be writing this reflection? Is this organization possibly employing many cogs in a wheel? Or would you rather see organization as, as those places where people gather to competitively seek their self-interest in a capitalist economy? Maybe rational economic individuals can work hard to fulfill the moral and economic imperatives of a good life capitalism. So it depends upon where you're coming from, what you're driving. You want to drive it in a very Marxian approach, then there is a different methodology that you'll be utilizing in order to see this particular case study. Okay, the theory of bureaucracy. If you recall, it looked pretty effective, sort of simplistic, simple itself, or even a simplified administrative system, facilitating modern capitalism and moving away from traditional types or organizations, focused very much on charismatic leadership described by the model of bureaucracy. And what were the main principles of bureaucracy? Kind of a rational legal authority already set in stone. It knows what anybody has to do, what you expect a person to do. Procedurally defined rules and regulations that organize and govern relationships between organizational units. The larger the entity, the more constrictive the rules and regulations. It's a very interesting kind of a question to raise. Let's see whether we can utilize the theory of bureaucracy. And does it remind us about clear divisions of labor in each role and obligations defined? Does everybody within the organization know who is responsible? Is there a command and a chain kind of a principle that's happening? Where does the authority arise from? Does the organization smack of rigid actions and resistance to change? Some of you have done the entire book reading, or possibly the entire Avalon Care case study, which keeps repeating, would probably know that. Is there too much of red tape? Is there too much of resistance to change? The bureaucracies of the late 20th century gave way to organizations more closely regulated by management. So let's see how that will fare for us. Should you drive your writing and thoughts around the scientific management theory? That's an interesting proposition too. Manages to monitor actions to increase the efficiency of services. Is the organization providing a mechanistic view? Does it look like that the changes that they wish to bring in workflow or processes will boost the worker productivity? Will they give better outcomes for the organization? Is there an emphasis on effectiveness and performance? Does it look like there is an attempt to introduce accurate procedures? I mean, what's the ultimate idea? Do they want to build up very good record setting? Do they want to, most of the stuff that they are talking about, has it come about as a result of careful analysis? There are some assumptions. Whatever assumptions that you go with, just bring a little bit of rational theory behind it and talk to it. If you were to use the scientific management theory, now you need to then see, do you see some implications such as the needs of the management are the same as those of employees and staff? Does it look like that unions are unnecessary in this organization? Everybody is taken care of very well. Are jobs kind of divided almost evenly between managers and staff, such that the managers apply the concepts of scientific management on a day-to-day practice, and there's preparation and the employees actually execute all the tasks? Now, here's one. Yeah. Do we anticipate some flexible specialization within the organization? Are there low levels of union membership that can be assumed and consensus built between unions and managers? Is the organization scientifically selecting, training, and developing each employee rather than passively leaving them to train themselves? So is there a performance appraisal system? Is there a training, right from induction when you join in an organization to anything that can go beyond? So that's an important indication for you. Then, of course, can we use this McGregor's management theory? What's it about? Two theories of management, theory X and theory Y. The key element of the theory X and direction and control. The question, therefore, is management responsible for all aspects of production that are being coordinated? Is management guiding every employee efforts to match the organization needs? Is the organization utilizing persuasion, incentives, Or is it just penalizing people? Is it punishing people? I think these are some of the questions that we possibly need to ask. Are there also any other assumptions about theory X? People are rank lazy. Workers are very, very lazy. Their motivation is primarily just to get their monthly pay, fortnightly pay, weekly pay, whatever it is, and some incentives here and there. They're driven just by money. Money is their motivation. These people must be continually directed and guided to be far away. Managers are really far away from the workers. They seem to meet only to give orders, to rebuke, kind of a stick approach rather than a carrot approach. They seem to focus on the negatives, not on employee positives. Now we will continue a little more about the management part, McGregor's management theory. The theories of management, the theory X and Y that we reviewed last time, what were the key elements of theory Y? In the interest of economic purposes, it says management is responsible for manufacturing. So let's not use the word manufacturing here. Management is responsible for the services that it undertakes. Workers are, of course, not passive. The workers are always inspired to do their best. That means they are motivated to do their best. How would social workers receive their motivation? Is that just from the organization from the top? It's also from the grassroots. When they do something, when people express happiness at which at the actions of social workers, plus the intrinsic satisfaction of being a social worker, of being a worker at the grassroots, at the coal face, or at the middle management. I think those are very, very important indicators. One advantage of work surely is money. But to dismiss social work as one profession that only works for money is ridiculous. In fact, there are many other professions if only one wanted money. And I'm not too sure, even in those professions where you make money, people will tell you or accept that they are there because there's money. A doctor certainly makes, a GP makes good money. A specialist probably makes more money. But of course, there are risks with those jobs as well. There's passion about those jobs. There's compassion about those jobs. There's concern about those jobs. So naturally, I'm not one of those persons very fond of using the terminology like people are always interested in their money. I think there is always an intrinsic motivation, an aspiration that comes with everything that we do. So individuals love being given responsibility and being self-directive. Management needs to have the framework to allow workers to devote themselves to the needs of the company or to the organization. After all, workplaces are known to be families and communities. I have worked in those kind of organizations. For about 12 years that I work in Disability Services Queensland, for many it must have even been a bad example. For me, it was not. Probably I never thought of that to be a bad example. There were many times I didn't get a promotion. But did I no, did I give up? No. It's one of those things on Friday afternoon you come to know you didn't get a promotion. Ah, never mind. Start back again on Monday. Not because you have no choice, but because you got to be realistic. You got to start working. And you have to continue with a level of optimism that will generate, uh, other opportunities at some point of time. Maybe it's not too early. Maybe it was too early. It wasn't yours. Now, again, it's not a mixture of these things. When you start feeling it's not yours, maybe it was somebody else's turn and things like that, one sounds a little fatalistic. But look, it's not fatalism alone. It's the way your outlook itself is. So the Avalon Care is a large organization. It's a large not-to-profit organization. And it started off with people with their mental health needs, older people and homeless people. Now, what could be the values at that point of time? Just mere help, be there, kindness, curiosity, an approach of meeting the needs of some of those people. But as I mentioned, the organization has gone through changes. And the organization, sorry for just going back to one of those slides, but yeah. So the organization has just gone through some of the changes. And these changes, initially itself, people saw themselves as a grassroots organization, fair enough, run by and for survivors of mental health system. That means there was something in the mental health system that you needed to survive in order to be, come out of it. Maybe the recovery model wasn't one of those things at that point of time. It's an old organization. Social action was a core activity and was motivated in part by the exposure of abuses in the large psychiatric institutions of the day. So it's a deinstitutionalization model, whether it's psychiatric or disability. The support and advocacy groups grew. Get that feeling of the organization. The organization gained greater legitimacy and began to be included in government planning and consultation activities. Why we need to think about Avalon Care in a historical perspective. It's an imaginative organization, right? But why do we need to get back into the history? It's a lovely, it's a lovely thought to think about what could have been the mental health institutions in the past. It's not a bad idea to do a little bit of Google history of some of this stuff to get to the feelings. Your narrative, your reflective, your standpoint of view gets further strengthened. But don't have to do too much. If you have the luxury, do a little bit research about what was mental health institutions before deinstitutionalization, before the recovery model. Let's say 1980s, 1970s. Even the language was different. We know that. So have a look at that. So grassroots community activism and support. Can we use those terminologies today? Smartly, can you call yourself a social work activist? Maybe you can. But if you do a little more than what is required, it becomes advocacy. And probably not all advocates are liked because advocates are then thought of as God. These guys whinge too much. We're taking care of the clients. I think these guys are asking a bit too much. That could be one of those things. So for advocacy, You need a deliberate plan. You need some sustainable ideas. You also perhaps need to have worked in the system, seen the system, worked through maneuvering, somewhat subversive at sometimes. And then, of course, an advocate is born. Right. Community-based service delivery and advocacy. In the early 1980s, the organization set up 2 activity centers for people. And then, of course, after a decade, the organization grew rapidly, set up branches in the regional areas, and developed a range of services, including home, respite, meal services, drop-in. So it's all expanding. Think of the breadth of services that have come about. And so, for what has happened then, a professional service delivery and research center kind of came up. They were informed by research in the 90s. They managed to look at university social work, medical nursing schools, organizations continued to grow, major research activity began to come. So then they felt that we need to corporatize ourselves. Difficulties attracting funding led the board to appoint a chief executive officer based primarily on management experience and offering a significantly higher salary package that has been offered to previous coordinators. I can live with that because I was one of those once upon a time in a community organization closer to that time, of changes. They said, "Look, we're thinking in terms of, bringing a bigger perspective of the organization. So, is it okay if you serve as a deputy to an MBA who might come up?" Now, initially for the first day, obviously, first week, it was a very depressive thought. But then I thought, let me see how long will this guy last. That was one of those very, very, uh, internal desires that I had. Let me see what happens with all this managerial stuff that comes in. The second was, why leave? It'll not look nice if you leave early. Be a deputy, take the challenge, work for a while, get out with dignity to another organization which might still want you as somebody who could be an advocate for the community. So that was always my approach. Don't chicken out when somebody tells you, look, this somebody else is going to take over this particular job. Give them a chance. See what they can do. Maybe there's innovation. Maybe you're stagnating, you don't know. Give yourself a chance, an opportunity to learn. So that's how I used to look at it. And that's one reason why I don't give up even now. And that's probably the way in which one needs to look up. So they started thinking in terms of a major non-governmental provider of community-based services to people with not only mental health needs, but a larger supplier of semi-independent accommodation services to older people and homeless people. Jesus, this is becoming a Ben-Hur. This organization reminds us of many of these organizations which are there at this point of at least the top 3 or 4 organizations are similar to this. And of course, they have enough problems as well, right? So let's look at what the situation is. The CEO recently initiated a strategic review. As part of these consultations, has been asked to examine the delivery of social work services, and which he did. And however, the CEO is concerned that this is unnecessarily restrictive and there may be other well qualified and experienced people who may just as well be placed to carry out these roles. So, in other words, he doesn't feel that for everything you need a social work degree or a counseling degree. He does believe that, look, people with lived in experience can also do this. People with certificate 3 can do it. Certificate 4 can do it. Maybe he believes that things can be done from a case management perspective, and you don't really need, hugely qualified people to work around. So what am I hitting at? I'm not hitting at anything. I'm not supporting the CEO, nor am I suggesting that the social workers ought to make hue and cry out of the whole thing. I would probably say, guys, get up, awake, arise, and try and see what is the way by which we can convince these people that there is something that we can do super special that some of these others can do. Do we have something which can tell us that we could do it, that others can't do it? Or given into the territory and then move up to supervise some of them? It's a question of how you would like to differentiate is one thing, keep the difference is one thing, specialize is the other thing. Advance clinically is the other thing. One can show all those dimensions. Okay, organizational change. These assignments, these two assignments, the last two are primarily on this. What are they about? What are the factors? Some organizations have mergers, political imperatives, public policy changes, media pressure, injection of funding or lack of funding, change in client needs, or there are no more aged and frail aged in that particular area. What do you do with a home which has only got 6 people and it was originally meant for 60? So in that case, you think logically, where am I going to place these 6 people elsewhere? What do I do with the 54 other beds? Consolidation, organization is closing, change of policy direction, and various kinds of activities that can come about. New program initiatives, all these can come about. So there's another theory, another orientation. Why I'm showing you a few of these things which are not shown before in the first and second or third lectures is because to give you the freedom to choose beyond those few theories that we have studied, read a little more about organizational behavior, organizational theories, pick up any of them and try and see what you can do. So change is based on 4 components. And what are those? Field, the field theory, which means the grounded theory changes. Internally, there is group dynamics that changes. People undertake action research. And of course, there is a 3-step model of change that is advanced. When the forces are evenly balanced, the organization is inertia, and does not change. To effect change, the force of change must be amplified. You need to talk about it. You need to advertise that. Then only you'll be able to reduce the change or manage the resistance to change. Alternatively, you can do both at the same time. I think in one of those organizational change diagrams before, we talked about steps by which we can change people. They are reluctant to change. Find out why they are reluctant. They don't have the skills. Then upskill them. Then give them an opportunity. Give them an incentive before telling them a stick up. Before taking up a stick approach, we do talk about using a carrot approach. The goal of field theory is to map the environment in which the group exists. If successful change is to occur, the focus must be on the group rather than on the individuals. The group must participate in the process by acting, evaluating the action, and then engaging again and again until the change is successful. I'm sure the CEO will try to do some of those things, and let us hope he does that. There is yet another theory, Levin's three-step model, which is about what if a change is initiated? How does it do it? Unfreeze, initiate, disrupt the equilibrium in the group. So you move the change towards adoption or adaptation, changes. Adoption takes place when everybody accepts it. Adaptation, when certain things are to be remodeled. Engaging in action research methods to help the group to learn new behaviors. And refreezing, accepting use of incorporation, stabilizing the group in a new equilibrium. These are some of the terminologies when you start uh, looking at it from the perspective of this model, you will get enough references and you will be able to do that. So Kurt Levin's model is what we were looking at before. And okay, then we also have another model. And this model is about Cotter's model of change in 1995. There's a reference there, and there are plenty of internet articles you can use. I'm fondly advocating you to look at internet articles because it's easier for the human service organization materials. They're written in plain English. You don't need more than the textbooks, which are of course difficult at this point of time for you to acquire. So therefore you can use these things, but make sure, whether you're using Harvard or APS 7, do that well in terms of referencing. John Cotter was a professor at Harvard Business School. What did he do? He had a beautiful book written, which has got 8-step change process. And what are those steps? The steps are increase urgency for change. You wanted to bring it up quickly. Build the team for change. Construct the vision. Communicate the vision. Empower others to act on the vision. Create short-term wins for the people. Keep the momentum going. Keep telling them, COVID will move away. We will win. We will win. Make the change permanent. That's the way you need to be giving a message in the whole process. So let's look at something. Now there's one more model, which is called the Mckinsey seven-stage model, which also came up in the early 1980s. While some models of organizational effectiveness go in and out of fashion, one that has persisted seems to be the Mckinsey's framework. Some people may like it, some people may not. This is developed in the early 1980s by a guy called Tom Peters and his colleague Robert Waterman, two consultants who worked with this management company. And there is, I think there's a reference out there, which is I've given the reference there. You can see it. And we will look at this model. What does it model say? The model talks about the structure, strategy, system, skills, style, staff, and shared values. That's very, very important. Basically, shared value is where we start and then we start making changes in various aspects. Okay, the Mckinsey's model is about strategy. The plan is devised to maintain and build competitive advantage over the competition. The structures are defined as the way the organization is structured and who reports to whom. Systems are the daily activities and procedures that staff members engage into to getting the job done. Shared values are called superordinate goals. When the model was first developed, they say that these are also called as core values, and that's what social workers are happy to call. Wherever the word company is, substitute that to an HSO that are evidence in the corporate culture or in the organizational culture and the general work ethic. Style. Style is basically the style of leadership adopted, and staff, the employees and their general capacities or capabilities. So the skills, of course, are, the skills, of course, are the actual skills and competencies of the employees who are working. By the way, because of, quick transition of this, I've also put the PowerPoint into the system, either along with the 8th lecture or possibly separately with the assessments that'll come through. Now, let's look at the next slide. Okay, this is very important. Am I restricted to organizational practice theories? Yes, definitely. Only the theories, but you are not restricted to only what I taught you in the initial stages. It's a very vast subject. I've taught this to social workers, and I've also taught this to non-social workers. So basically, if you have the interest, if you have the desire, look up any organizational behavior textbook, any organizational behavior or change management kind of a literature. But whenever you reference it, obviously reference it well in whatever system you do. But you can go beyond what has been taught in the first 7 weeks. I'm happy to read from you any of your theoretically well-informed arguments. They must be from organizational practice in human service organizations or management theoretical frameworks that can be applied to human service organizations. Hope this particular um, special issue helps you to understand what we are talking about, and it will help you to do